Welcome to self-discoverywisdom.com, formerly known as Self-Discovery Media. On these podcasts, you're going to hear people who speak from the heart. They've taken the journey in life. Many things have happened to them, but they've changed it to happening for them. And in their strength, their courage, they've discovered their abilities and their wisdom, and they are now sharing it here with you. Do enjoy each show. We bring it to you with love and knowing that it's going to help you on your journey of life. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Choose Positive Living right here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. I'm your host, Sarah Troy, and my wonderful guest today is Deb Miller. From housewife to global leader, a journey of self-discovery and bold decisions. Well, what were those? She wrote a book called Forget the Fairy Tale and Find Your Happiness because she lived it. And she knows that she's not alone. Too many women believe society's script that says happiness depends on finding Prince Charming and checking all the boxes. She believed that too. In the beginning, her journey of self-discovery began with a bold choice to rewrite the story she'd been given, from midwife housewife to global marketing executive to professor and author. She's learned that happily ever after isn't handed to you, it's built one brave decision at a time. And she is here to remind women that it's never too late to take the reins, ditch the outdated fairy tale, create a life rooted in their unique definition of joy. And this conversation is for everybody who's ready to rewrite their happy ever after and be their own hero. Absolutely love that. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Welcome to the show, Deb.
I'm so excited to be here, Sarah, and talk about how everyone can own their own happy ending and write that fairy tale that gets them there. There is not one glass slipper, one size fit all. We all have to take the reins and create our own, but it took me a long time to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're brought up, certainly my generation, Prince Charming and the slipper will fit and you will live happily because that's all we saw in the movies. You got married, the ring was on your finger. Now, of course, you're going to be happy,
Well,
right?
it's interesting. Those fairy tales, they stop right when she lands the prince.
Exactly.
The previous ones, right?
Right.
The Snow Whites and the Cinderellas,
Yes.
and then the women's movement came along,
Yeah.
and the media had to change and reflect more current moms instead of the June Cleavers. They had to have, a Claire Huxtable who was a
Mm.
professional woman, and we had Mary Tyler Moore in there as a single woman. And now we have Claire Dunphy, more recently in Modern Family. So the media had to reflect it, and Disney did too. So they
Mm-hmm.
they took those damsels in distress, and they in the late 80s, early 90s, they updated them to the Belles, Ariels, and Jasmines, but they still
Yes.
had a guy saving the day ultimately. It
Yeah.
wasn't until the Mulans and the Meridas in Scotland and the Moanas, and now
Mm.
there's not even a prince in sight. She is saving the day, and what a great message for young
Yeah.
girls to see.
And there's nothing against the guy wanting to step and be a savior. Absolutely not. But it's not for us to abstain from our own decision making. We say if you want to have a good relationship, he's strong, she's strong, stronger together, right? But you've got to come with your strength. You've got to know what love is because of self-love. You've got to know how to make decisions. You've got to know how to live with a crisis. And then you can come into a relationship strong and ready to build together. The two complementing each other, not completing each other.
Exactly. Somebody described it to me as we each have a leg in the pants,
Mm,
And I thought,
mm,
wasn't that a
yeah,
lovely analogy? Yes, I'm all for princes. I've been married 35 years of my life. It's just you have to take responsibility for
yeah,
your own happiness. You should not be, it's unfair to count on Prince Charming. I have a
yes.
son too, that's a huge responsibility. Some guy needs to write a counterpart to this book. Like,
Mm.
yes, society's expectations for men can be really challenging too.
And that's where it comes about on how we raise our sons, right? You don't have to be the savior. Now, there's still nothing wrong with you opening the door, that respect, because that reflects on your character. Equally, a woman could say, so, okay, I can take the burden right now, or I can take the steering wheel. But it's to honor the woman's strength by recognizing the men's strength, but it's not a submission of one over the other. And, that's
Yes.
what we were taught for so long. And then it went the other way that we had women, I don't need men at all. And the
Right.
pendulum swung too far the other way. And no, we want you to have a glorious relationship. That
Yes.
person may be your Prince Charming, but he recognizes you as the all powerful princess.
Well, I think if you look at my title, it's a bit of a spoiler. So,
Mm-hmm.
forget the fairy tale. It's kind of two halves. Forget the fairy tale. So forget the script that society
Yes.
gives any person, right? You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to check off certain boxes like you have to be married by 30, you have to be married at all, you have to do any of these things, have a certain job, follow the career path of your parents. You don't have to do any of those things. That's the forget the fairy tale.
Mm.
But the second part is the responsibility piece and find your happiness. You can find your happiness if you take responsibility
Yeah.
for that and figure out what it is that is a good fit for you as a
Yeah.
career, as a partner, whatever your path might be, it's up to you. And I think I also grew up thinking, like the fairy tale, that it will just all magically happen. Like if you get married, then all things will be great. And I think many women, especially back in the day, held on to that belief.
And what a disservice to women because, just because he put a ring on it doesn't mean, that everything is going to be hunky dory. There's going to be challenges in your relationship, challenges in life. And if you're not prepared for those challenges to handle them on your own, because sometimes you have to be the strength, they can't be. Sometimes it's the two of you being the strength, but we didn't prepare women for what
Right.
was yet to come. And when then, when something hit the fan, it was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Where's my prince? And we're very, very capable of handling situations. We need to teach our daughters and our sons that the power is in within you,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
there is a time to bring out your power. There's a time to empower others, but you're only that relationship only going to be as strong as the two of you as individuals.
And I think I felt that it was my responsibility to teach my children that. And I'm
Mm.
super proud that they all are very strong. They're like the Moanas, so to speak. They're very
Yes.
strong warrior princesses. My two daughters and my son is engaged to a warrior princess. So he respects those qualities in a female.
And so, because you going on your own journey of self-discovery, there's got to be more than this. I've got to be more than this. Then it shows them um,
Yes.
that although there is more to a woman than just being a mother
You
or
know, my
just being a wife.
My granddaughter was at one of my book launches over the weekend, and we actually had actresses perform a couple scenes from the book, which was so cool. But
Hmm.
I'm looking at the audience, and I asked. We get to the Q&A portion, and the first person who shot up their question to ask me a question was my 5-year-old granddaughter. And it was so sweet. And she runs up to the front and grabs the microphone. I can't even imagine doing that at age 5. And I was
No.
just so proud of her. She forgot her question by the time she got up there, but we recovered it. And I don't know, I'm just so, I even caught her reading the book out in the audience. We got this lovely picture of her. So I'm so excited about this next generation,
Mhm.
and my own kids coming up, that they don't wait for Prince Charming to save the day. They do understand that that it's up to them.
To say to a woman, you have no strength, it's all on the man, is both a burden to the man
Yes.
um, and a disservice to the woman. And quite honestly, I think we're in a time period in life where kind of the mama attitude, roll up your sleeves, you did what? It's time to set things right. Um, we need that mama strength at the moment. We need that woman strength at the moment because kind of we're seeing so much unruliness out there that's gone bizarre in many, many ways that we need the strength of a woman who comes with common sense love.
Yes. Yes. And for me, I was kind of the accidental executive. Later in
Mm-hmm.
life, I was the accidental executive and then author now. I really didn't plan any of these things, but
Mm-hmm.
if you would ask me, like, how did I get out of the self-discovery? Well, to me, it was about my why. I
Mm-hmm.
I I wanted a better life for my kids. And if Prince Charming wasn't able to deliver that, then I'm going to get on my white horse and I'm going to figure out how to get all of us there to the happily ever after that I was imagining for them. So I
Hmm.
guess the self-discovery was that Prince Charming wasn't going to be able to deliver. It was going to fall upon me if that's what I wanted. And by golly, I will do that. And then I just worked super hard and moved up through the ranks very quickly. And actually, it was tennis that launched me. It wasn't a job posting. When it was time for me to go back to work full time, I actually, right around that time, I hosted some tennis players from the Soviet Union that came to Indianapolis, of all places where I lived, in the summer of 1990. And two of them, two 9-year-olds, became quite famous that were in that small group. Anna Kournikova and
Hmm.
Marat Safin, who later won the US Open. So we actually ended up hosting a coach, and later they had all these ideas. It was still the Soviet Union back then in 1990,
Hmm.
and they were just dying to, anyone who could even travel, like the tennis players, were dying to talk about business ideas of selling things from Russia over to America. And they ended up inviting me over there. So I went there in 1991, right before the Russian coup. So it's a
Mm.
very interesting point in history that I was able to see this country when it was still, fully communist. Not that it isn't today, very different
Right,
world over there
right.
today. But back in the day, right before the tanks rolled in, past the Russian White House, and Gorbachev was then out, and then Yeltsin was in. I was there like a month or so ahead of that. Very interesting. So then I became a women's tournament director on the WTA, the Pro Tour. And then that showed me that, hey, maybe I don't need to stay with finance and accounting, which is what I'd been before. I had an MBA, I had a CPA, I had a nice career in corporate finance. I did the CPA work during when my kids were younger, part-time. I taught at Indiana University. I thought I was always this accounting finance kind of person. But now I saw the world of marketing. And to me, it was so much more interesting, and played to my creative side.
Mm.
So when it was time to go back to work full time, I had an offer from Eli Lilly in corporate finance, and I had one from Cummins Engine Company on an international marketing. So guess which one I took? And
Marketing.
yes, and then that opened up for me all the fun. And when work
Yeah.
is more fun,
Yes.
then it's not really work. And so that's when things really grew for me.
I think, there's a big thing that comes up for me here is that we went through the 60s of burn the bra, right? Equality for women, etc. And then we kind of went through especially the 80s and early 90s, where women became almost masculine to work in a man's
Yes.
world. And it's like, then it became, hey, hang on. Why am I compromising my femininity? Why am I compromising the very thing that gives me a strength above them, being a woman? I'm going to dress as a woman. I'm going to act as a woman. I'm going to bring my women ideals to this situation to balance it out. And it's still, for some people, a battle, for them to go in there and not kind of be masculine to meet masculine. But those like yourself have stood up and said, I am a woman. This is my perspective. This is what I want to see. I love what I'm doing. Then that becomes something, gosh, where have you been? How come we didn't see this before? Because you closed the door on us and told us to be masculine, not feminine. Now you've opened the door on us, the floodgates are open, and you're seeing that feminist movement of strength and leadership pour out, where
Yes.
women are opening up their own companies because they're
It-
tired of the battle. And I think it's wonderful to see that, because what we're seeing is, again, that common sense approach to things most of the time. But we're also seeing we're taking a burden off the men in many ways,
yes.
of that you having to be the hero, the king, the ruler, the everything. No, you don't have to be. We're very, very, very capable, even outside the kitchen,
Well,
right?
look at so many female leaders, especially of other
Yes,
countries,
yes.
and the number of college graduates now,
Mm.
and the female ranks. There's just so many statistics that you could point at. But for me, it was not overnight. I mean, I
Hmm.
was, and I talk about it in the book. I was when I first went into the workforce, I really thought I had to be bland,
Hmm.
and I was especially on the accounting side, like you're wearing the gray suit and the little, I think they called them pussy bows or something, and you had what do we call them, nylons or something? Like it's
Mm,
just very, very bland because you were expected to kind of just blend in,
hmm.
don't be a problem, no ripples and so forth. These movements take time. And
Yes, they do.
I think that the women's generation, the younger ones, the ones my kids' age, they get it more naturally. And the young
Mm,
ones, like I described, my granddaughter is just, inherent. But I think now men are a few decades behind. They're going through that. Like,
mm-hmm.
what is my role? How do I fit in, and how do I still maintain my masculinity in a situation where you have equal partners and all this? I think it's a challenge, and I think it'll take another decade or two for those young men to figure it all out, and the young boys maybe.
There's an awful lot of men that I interview that, with the work that they're doing, is actually targeting men and saying, you have a voice, it's just a different voice we want you to have. We want a voice that comes from the inside out, not the expectation voice, not the societal voice, but the voice of your own beautiful divine gift that comes from within. We
Oh, I
want you to
love
hear
that.
it. We want you to feel it. We want you to become it, because then you become more inclusive and you become more balanced and you see things differently. Therefore, you act on things differently. And it's not demasculating, it's demisogynizing. It's taking that he-man away and saying it's okay for you to even bring out the feminine side within you, because we all have it, the yin and the yang.
Yes,
But it's
yes,
also to turn to woman and say, I can't do that. That's your strength. It's not mine. I can't do that. And not feel fearful that you're letting someone down, or that you just are incapable of everything. No, we've all got strengths, right? And I think one of the biggest strengths we have is to say, I'm weak in this area.
yes. And you know what? There's a recent Harvard study. In fact, I think it's officially coming out in July. I'm starting to look into the science of it. I've
Mm,
actually got a panel October 6th with some UW, University of
my birthday.
Washington, psychology professor who teaches happiness as a
Mm,
course, and another
mm,
that teaches memoir as a course. And I actually have a doctorate. I teach at Washington State, so I'll be balancing that out, and Purdue University, but I'll be talking about the self-discovery part. So we're having
mm,
a fantastic happiness panel on modern day
excellent.
happiness. So I'm looking into the science behind it to kind of prep for all that. And this Harvard study that's just coming out talks about how, I think it was a 20 or 30-year study of graduates, all very busy people who talk about, the issue that they were looking at is how do you make time to be happy, or who is happy? There's all that
Mm,
is all about the happiness piece. And what they found is that people that are self-report as happy, they have a meaningful approach, some purpose in life. They
yes.
called it meaning. They have certain level of achievement, however they define it, right?
Hmm.
And then the third element, this was the variable. It was about finding moments of joy in your
Hmm.
life. It doesn't matter the quantity, doesn't matter how busy you are.
Yes.
It may be just petting a dog in the morning,
Hmm.
or watching your child fall to sleep at night. It can be some small moment for the busiest people, but if you don't allow yourself time to have those moments of joy that accumulate and then give you that state of happiness, that
Hmm.
overall state of happiness, then you probably aren't going to be happy.
No.
So on your positive living approach, that's really allow yourselves, give yourself permission to have those moments of joy, because they do pay off for you.
I think also something else that, because I've been doing this 13 years, so 3,000 shows, so a lot that you learn along the line. But, one of the other things is, what's your old programming? Because we've all got a program we're running on. It's an ancestral program, DNA program, societal
Mhm.
program, and very often we're not aware that's what we're running on. And so I've been interviewing an awful lot of people on who are looking at, how is the program operating? What is it saying to you? How is it subliminally getting in the way of you making changes? And this applies both to men and women. And one of them was a simple thing, the seven-word philosophy, and it's that between the ages of 3 or 6, we grab onto three words to define us that come from family, come from what people say to us, and we either become the people pleaser, the appeaser, the sacrificer, the this and that, and those words become the driver's seat unknowingly. and they stop you from being able to find that joy or become who you're meant to be. And I think so much is like, we want that joy, we don't know how to get it. What is the thing that's blocking you? What old programming is running in the background that's still taking charge? And I think that that self-discovery must go deep, not only with what's in the mind, but what's in the heart and what's in the soul and spirit.
That's interesting. I'm going to have to look into that more. I describe my childhood as an apple pie childhood. It was a lot.
With
I have
ice
no,
cream?
when the truck came around,
Hmm.
ringing, of course, you couldn't let that go by without stopping and buying. But um, no, we hung, our mothers were judged by how clean their homes were,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
how successful their husbands were and how their
Hmm.
kids turned out. So my mom was, very good at all that. She's the
Hmm.
perfect little corporate wife. She kept the immaculate home. We weren't allowed in the living room. We called it the lightning room. Lightning would strike you if you walked in there. And in the summers, we returned outside with all the neighborhood kids.
Yes.
And we raised ourselves like a little
Hmm.
pack, and we lived in tree houses, during the day. And we explored creek beds and we picked blueberries and we had a summer play, once a year in the backyard. And so we did all these things. We were allowed in for meals, and that was about
Yeah.
it, at the sound of the dinner bell. And but all that, it did allow us time to explore kind of how we fit into that pack. And you're right, we were kind of labeled like, oh, she's a Rita Rabbit, or
Mm.
she's the creative one. Let's have her apply those skills here. I think that's really interesting. But in my case, I was very fortunate. So I was
Yes.
surrounded by a positive community from the beginning, not a whole lot of, parental influence, but a lot
Hmm.
from the neighborhood kids.
And that's, it takes a village to raise a child. And that was, when a village did. It looked out for a
Yes.
kid. Now if your kid is not seen in the yard at all, you panic, right? Because we're in a different world today. And we're not really
Yes.
kind of teaching kids skills of how to deal with,
Yes.
issues or to trust the um, danger or how to recognize it because we're what do they call it, helicoptering mums and things. So it's we went out, we got scrapes and bruises. I used to take my doll's pram and go away for blocks with my
Yes.
doll's pram playing mama, and um as long as I kind of came back now and again, it was okay. And I think a different world altogether. Can we do that in this world today? I don't know. I think we're just seeing too much of negative out there of other forces, but um a lot of it in that old programming I'm talking about is self-esteem and self-worth.
Mhm.
And again, what people say, oh, you'll never amount to anything. Oh, you can't do that. Oh, you're useless. All that dialogue builds up inside people, and that's what stops them from moving forward. And I think that's what stops for an awful lot of women from believing I can. And,
Yes.
and it's like, well, no, you're just this, you're just that. And then you get pigeonholed into a little area, and it's only generally when a crisis. I call it the cosmic two by four because we get the nudge, nudge, and wink,
Mm.
wink from the cosmos. And the cosmic
Yes.
two by four comes along, and it's either a divorce or a job loss, or God forbid, a child loss or
Right.
cancer or some illness that makes them go, I'm ashes right now. From these ashes, what can I become? And that's when they go on that journey of self discovery of who they are and what they're really here for. But what we want people to do is avoid the cosmic two by four, all
Yes.
right? And redirect, recognize where your life is right now, what you're doing through books of, or your books of what you're doing, the work you're doing, the podcasting. Recognize that, hey, my God, you're talking about me. I'm the helicopter mum at home. I know there's so much more in me, but this is what's expected of me. But what do I expect for myself?
Yes. Yes. And I think I went through all that myself. So
Mm,
I'm here if any woman is out there or any person out there thinking this, I'm here, read the book. I'm here to tell you I survived all that. I had an
mm,
apple pie childhood, but I had a lot of bumps in the adult piece of it.
mm-hmm.
And I think what sees you through riding that white horse is that, I do see women. I
Yeah.
celebrate you. I'm cheering you on if you are the one that needs to hop on that horse and be
Mm.
the hero of your story and be responsible, and there's so many women that have to do all that. So there's a lot of life lessons, I think, in the book.
Yes.
And then a lot of people have asked me, why did you write a memoir? Like, why are you sharing this? It started for me during the pandemic. This is a pandemic project, like many that are coming out now. It's kind of like Blizzard babies come out,
Hmm.
9 months after a
Yeah.
blizzard. Now there's a lot of pandemic books coming out, memoirs 5 years later. So I started writing the book for my kids just as family memories. I had just become a grandmother. I wanted to pass on to my granddaughter stories to answer questions about life decisions I made. I wish I had two really cool grandmothers, and I thought,
Mm.
I wish I knew more about their lives. I wish I had a book about their lives. And so I held up the mirror and thought, maybe I should write one for my
Hmm.
granddaughter. You've got this pandemic now, you've got a little time. So I started writing out family memories, and eventually I sent it to the publisher just on a whim. I thought, well, you never know if they think there's something here. And they loved that I had used the Disney princess framework. I
Hmm.
actually start each chapter with some cultural commentary because I remembered from when I was working on my dissertation years before that about how Disney had evolved the princesses. And I thought, well, I evolved too. So
Hmm.
maybe that's a nice universal thing that other people
Hmm.
can relate to, or even my kids at the time is who I was focused on. So that starts out each chapter, kicks it off with an epigraph, it's technically called, and then it gets into the personal side of the story. So as I was writing this, I sent it to the publisher. They said, we love this, but the story needs to be about you. The story is, you need to trim out the most of the family stories and talk about your transformation because that's what's really interesting. And that was kind of weird for me to think about,
Hmm.
like, oh, a story about myself. Do I really want to do that? Do I
Hmm.
really want everyone to know about my private life or not? And so this all leads up to the reason I chose to go forward with it is because I thought there were some lessons in there that could benefit other people, especially women, you know. And originally I thought my target audience was baby boomer women, more like
Hmm.
myself. But I have students at Washington State that all read it and helped me with some social media to get starting. And all six of them that originally read it, they said every woman needs to read this book,
Hmm.
and they really saw it as a role model that they could learn from, and in some ways a cautionary tale on certain aspects. And also, I mean, spoiler again, there's a happy ending.
Right.
So they learned that the journey
By
isn't
choice, a happy
it
ending by choice.
yes, that the journey isn't about finding a
Right.
prince, it's
Hmm.
about finding yourself. And that was a super lesson for them and others who have read it to learn.
I'm 70, so I was born in the 50s. So, raising my children, and I was late having my first one, 28 when I had my first child. But back then, everybody was, very young when they had their kids.
Yes.
And, my daughter had her first one at I think it was, I'm trying to work it backwards, like 31, then 33, and now she could be 36. It's 2 years apart in each one. I'm getting the math wrong, but in her 30s. And so I've got a 5-year-old, a 4-year-old to 2-year-old, and one on the way in October. And I look at how she's raising her children, and I'm a bit tougher as a grandmother. I kind of a little bit more of the no nonsense. It's not quit your crying. It's like, are you finished now? Okay, let's get on and play. Where they're more mummy coddling, which is kind of very, very different. And I kind of look at the way I raise them, and I suppose I raise them the way my mother actually said to me, you've raised them differently the way you wanted to be raised. And I think that's the same of my daughter now. She's raising her children perhaps the way she had wanted to be raised.
There's
Uh,
a saying about that you
yes.
raise your children the way you wish you would
Mm,
have been
yeah.
raised.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And, the thing is, it's not for us, for a while there, I felt kind of guilty. And then it was like, no, I did what I knew to do under the circumstances of where I was at, right? And we do our best in the time period that we're in. Hindsight is 2020. If we could all have
Yes.
hindsight, it's different. But I think it's you know, your kids aren't in jail. They've all got good careers. They're happy people. They're alive. You must have done something right. But would I like to have gone back and done something different? But I already broke the mold from my mother. My kids are breaking the mold from me. You
Yes.
take what's good out of what you've been raised with, and you adjust it to what today's elements are and where you're going forward. And women, yes, you can have it all. You can be
Yes.
the sex goddess, you can be the kitchen guru, you can be the best mother in the world, and you can be the executive. The choice is yours. But
Yes.
the thing is, find your balance. What is your
Yeah.
core priority? And it's rather like oxygen in the airplane. If you're not taking care of you, you will run out of oxygen and then you're no good to anyone else. So always
Right.
make sure whatever you're doing, you are looking after you, because when you look after you, you are then equipped to look after everyone else.
Yeah, I agree with all that you just said. In the book, there's a piece where my oldest daughter and I are talking about a speech that I gave to a group of 500 women at United Way years before that conversation. And I entitled it Pick Two, like at Panera, where you can pick two. And this was, they wanted tips from executive women about how they reached the pinnacle of success. And they were talking about corporate women. And I thought, okay, if you're going to give a talk, you want to really think through what's the message. And so I came up with this title, Pick Two, because my philosophy was that there are kind of four major aspects of life. And if you want to be really, you can be balanced and that's fine, or you can pick two and really rise up, or even one
Yeah.
and be super special. So my areas were, let's see if I can remember them. They were your career.
Hmm.
You could choose your family, however you define it. It might be, your partner, or it might be a pack of kids, or all together. It might be your parent, that your aging parent you're caring for, whatever. Your dog. Your
Hmm.
family is number two. So career, family, friends, and then self.
Hmm.
And so many people are wonderfully balanced at all those. But again, they were asking, how did you get to be a vice president of multiple Fortune 500 companies, within 8 years of returning to the workforce? And I thought, well, it's because I only focused on family and then the job.
Hmm.
And that's it. I gave up. And I'm not saying this is right for other
Hmm.
people to do, but it was my choice at the time to give up like all friends, like I just didn't allow myself time for that. And frankly, not much time for myself.
Yeah.
I have fingernail polish on now for the book launch, but I wasn't doing that. There was no fingernail polish back in those days. It was just really work, I don't know, like 14 hours a day and take
Mm.
care of kids that were always the priority in between. And
Mm.
I took those kids when I traveled many
Hmm.
times. So I was traveling the world, I'd take them along. And I do think that it impacted their worldview in a very positive way. They learned there
Hmm.
was a world outside of Indiana. And in fact, today, my oldest daughter ended up getting her master's from Cambridge in the UK, and she married a guy that she met while over there who's as British parents. And then my son did an internship in China, and he's engaged to a young woman whose parents immigrated from China. And my youngest also has two degrees, and she's our jet setter. She's all over the place. So I think all over the world. Like right now, she's flying back from London tomorrow. So my travels, by integrating
Yes.
them, expanded their view that
Yes.
wasn't normal for a child growing up in Indiana at the time. And I think it really benefited them.
It's not about the quantity of time, but the quality of time. Are you present when you're with them? And what we do see so much today is people are on their phone. Yes, dear, what, dear, no, dear, while they're on the phone. No, give the quality of time. Put the damn phone down. This is their time. This is your precious time with them, however old they are. Teenage, they want that conversation. They don't want to feel that you're not, that they're second fiddle to the phone and everything else. But it's also understanding, look, where I'm at in my career right now, it's going to take a lot of hours, but I'll get to a stage where I can cut back. And this is to give everybody a good foundation, a good rooting for you to springboard from. And I think if we explain it to children in a way, whatever age bracket they're in, they are so much more comprehending and understanding than we give them credit for. Our kids,
Yes.
our younger kids, are very, very, very smart. We've just got to speak in a dialogue way that they understand, but don't dismiss their comprehension. They far rather you have talked to them and say, "This is the way it is." Right. And you
Yes.
feel free to come to me anytime if you don't like something. And you're giving them permission to have a voice. And, our generation, We didn't have that permission. We had to give ourselves permission to have a voice. And that's why it took longer for us to get there,
Yes.
you know, to,
So true, Sarah, so true. And I just I think that many parents today, I see them looking at the phone, and not giving the full attention to the kids. I set parameters. We didn't have cell phones when they were very young, back in the day. But I said I worked 14 hours a day, and I did. I had very little sleep. But I would stop work at 5:30 every day, and I'd be home to them. And then I didn't start again until 9, but I was all theirs. You mentioned being present. I was
yes.
all theirs when I was there. And I think that's super important.
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple of careers during it, but basically I ended up being an at-home mum. I had a husband that hated me working because then I wasn't taking care of the kids, but then hated I wasn't working because I wasn't bringing in money. So you never won. That's the reason I'm no longer married to him. But I became the neighborhood mum. So, it was the
Oh,
kids came to me. I mean, I would open up the door and there's somebody who's been kicked out of their house, and they're in tears. I'd be the mediator between the parents. And so it was a different role that I took on. And I'm very grateful for the fact that I could do that because I looked at, for me, motherhood was a career. It was a
well, you
career
are gaining
choice.
skills.
Yes.
Being in the PTA or being the neighborhood
Mm,
mom, you are gaining. I was there too for 8 years. I was at home just working part-time,
mm,
but fully present there in the neighborhood. And you're gaining skills. Like I
exactly.
went out and got an IBM lab. I wrote a grant for the school to have the first computer lab. It was a beta test site with IBM, so you can use your time
Absolutely.
productively
Hmm.
while you're full time essentially at home. It's how
Yeah.
you choose to spend your time. What are your goals? For me, it was
Right.
I wanted my kids to have computers in the school, and back
Yes.
then they didn't. This was very revolutionary.
Right. Yes, yes. I did the casino night. So if you worked for the casino, then you took half of the proceeds, and that actually brought computers into the lab or more books into the library. And I was, yeah, for years I was,
I love
in the
that.
school, the absentee mum or graduation or tuck day, and so I was known as the neighborhood mum. And that was my career of choice. I always wanted children. I always wanted to be there for them. But absolutely right. When it came to a time that the children no longer needed me, um, I'm not an academic person. So what else could I do? And so you play to your strength. You play to
Yes.
whatever your passion leads you to. And don't worry about, quote, the skills because you discover what skills you have as you immerse yourself. Okay, I need to brush up on this or I need to do that. But God, I didn't know I was able to do this. I didn't know I already had the aptitude to do that. And that is, look at running a household. You're the accountant, you're the head cook and chef, you're the sex goddess, you're the counselor, you're the taxi driver, you're the nurse, you're the doctor, you are the house wife, you're everything under that title. Never dismiss what you brought, to those kids or what you have in transferable skills later. And so many women get caught up, but I'm only. No, you're not
Right.
just only, right? You're these, what do you want to do now that you no longer need to do that? What do you want to do now that you can take the reins on? You could be in the driver's seat for. And unless you're willing to discover, yourself and what you want to do, where you want to pour yourself out to, you're just always going to be just, I'm just. So break that mold and step out into
Yes.
something. Be exploratory. I
Well,
explored all sorts of things before I landed in this.
exactly. There's a wonderful virtuous circle of self-discovery
Mm,
leads to empowerment, leads to
mhm,
happiness, and it
mm.
just keeps circling. I mean, you're never done with the self-discovery part. You're always
No.
going to have new things, be a learner, but it's a wonderful circle, but it really starts with that self-discovery
Mhm,
piece. And so I'm here to give permission to
mm.
all people who, want to rewrite their fairy tale. Like,
Yeah.
let's get going. Let's get that happy ending, the one that's unique to you. but it's up to you to start it. You have to start, and just, you can start with baby steps. There's research out there about depressed people and how they can eventually become happy. And it's about writing down like 3 things a day where they found a moment of joy.
Yeah.
So again, it's the baby steps. You're not going to be like happy like overnight, but it starts with self-discovery, leads to empowerment, eventually circles to happiness, and then keeps going. So
Everything requires work. You get up
yes.
in the morning, wash your face, brush your teeth, get dressed, breakfast for the day. Everything is action, right? And when you take action and you become a participant in your own life, right? You don't like where you're at? Well, you're the only one to empower yourself to move forward. You don't know where you're going? Well, take that first leap, which is the first step in your self discovery. What courses could I go and take that interest me? Or where could I, what group could I join where I kind of find it intriguing what they're doing? That self discovery is dipping your toe into various things until you find, oh, I love these waters. I want to immerse myself into here. Don't think it's like, well, I'm on my self discovery. I'm going to find the perfect job. I'm going to find this. I'm going to find that. Or Prince Charming number 2. It doesn't work like that. It's be exploratory. Some waters are for you, some aren't. And some are just for experience, and some are where you're meant to be, but you're not going to know unless you participate in your own discovery.
You could listen to my playlist. I put a couple playlists on my website that there's a song for each chapter in the book. What was
Mm-hmm.
running through my head, first I did a Disney princess song version, just to kind of help me
Mm-hmm.
remember from all the ones I'd seen before. And there was one that fit each chapter. Then I started branching out and I did a 70s version because we all know 70s music is the best. And so I had all those
Yeah.
songs. And then I did one for oldies because there were some 60s version songs and other. So I did an oldies version. And then one of my students saw me working on a country version, which are really fun for book clubs. By the way, they'd
Mm.
say she should have had this song by this artist in that chapter. That would have been a better fit. But anyway, they did a Taylor Swift version for me, which is so fun. And the student said, because Taylor has a song for every occasion.
Yes.
So it was just so fun and
Yeah.
interactive. And that's what I
Yes.
love. So again, just finding, play some music that might,
Yeah.
jog you. Or I've told people send a digital postcard to yourself, like from
Mm.
Italy, that reminds you should be practicing your Italian because your goal is to eventually go practice it over there live. So
Mm.
just these are little things you can do yourself, just little sparks of happiness.
Mm. A lot of people, when they're in transition, a door is closed and they don't know where they're at or who they are anymore. And I don't know how to even recognize joy. And I say, go out into nature. The wind
Yes.
rustling the leaves, the ocean kissing the shore, the laughter of the children, the puppy dogs chasing sticks. If this doesn't warm your heart, if it doesn't, you know, put a smile on your face, then there's a lot bigger issue here, right? But
Yes.
it's nature has a way of bringing us out of ourselves and just bringing that, even it's momentary, of a big smile
Yes.
and a feeling. It's like, oh, I can feel like that. Oh, I
That
like this feeling of joy. I need to
yes.
do more in order to feel this joy more often. But you have to kind of jog joy's memory, right?
Hmm.
Because we've all known joy, but if we've been through ups and downs or tumultuousness, there's that joy seems to take a backseat and go somewhere else. So re-invite joy in and go and do joyous things for it to be able to
Yes.
come back.
And it doesn't have to cost anything. Some people
No.
will say, like, I don't have the money right now to do this or that. But you know what? Being kind to
Yes.
someone else will
Yes.
actually make you feel a lot better. And if you give recognition as free,
Mhm.
looking at the sunrise and some of the examples you mentioned in nature, those things are free.
Yes.
And so you don't have to spend a lot of money to find those little wisps of joy.
No.
You just have to allow yourself the space and remind yourself maybe until you get the habit to do
Mhm.
that.
And that's the thing, is you're rebuilding new programming and you have to
Yes.
repeat, repeat, repeat for it to override the old one. So, when you find something that really does bring you joy, it is kind of keep repeating until it really latches on. And the other thing is you talked about, people writing in a journal. I've got kind of the two column practice I have my people go through. And one is gratitude, one is lackitude. And
I
write
like
down the
that.
things that you feel that's lacking in your life or lacking in
Mhm.
yourself. Then write down all the things that you feel you're grateful for. Now feed the gratitude, not the lackitude.
I
And the
love
more
it.
you feed that, the more it's going to grow, because we are habitual creatures. And the more we make something a habit, the more
Yes.
we subliminally do it. So if we want to change the inner dialogue, we want to change the programming, we've got to kind of insert things that are positive and things to be grateful for, so that becomes the driver's seat.
I love it. That gets back to like the why. So
Hmm.
that's so important. That's your North Star and driving you.
Yeah.
But I love your point about how you have to reprogram
Yes.
sometimes. Some people may be naturally like that, and others have to rewire
Mm.
so that you can get to that happily ever after ending that we all deserve.
Mm. And that we wrote, not that
Yes.
somebody wrote for us. And if that happy ever after is a partner in your life, absolutely wonderful. If that partner respects and values you for who you are and what you have to contribute to the world, and vice versa, and you're each strong in your own being, doing your own thing, but when you come together, you multiply that strength in respect and cohesive. That is absolutely wonderful. But it's not about he completes me or I
Yeah,
need a man. No, you don't need a man. You need yourself. That will attract the right man.
that's exactly right.
So we can be our own Prince Charming while we're on this journey. And we're all vibrational creatures. We all resonate at a frequency. And the more that you rise up into this higher frequency of self love, the more that you're going to attract positive things happening to you. I call it flawsomeness. Like the Japanese take a bowl that's broken and they
Oh,
put it back together with gold.
yes.
I'm saying take all your shattered pieces that have happened to you in life, put it back together with self love. And then that bowl becomes so much stronger. Fill it with love and it will constantly overflow. Because the more love we are and the more love we give, the more love that grows.
What a beautiful mosaic. I'm very visual person and I'm picturing the bowl and to me all the broken pieces, but they're not really broken. When you
Mm.
place them together, they
Mm.
make a beautiful, beautiful whole.
Yeah, there are experiences of life, good or bad. They are was what carved you to being the person you are today. And if you've ended up being disgruntled and bitter, it's because you didn't see the gratitudes. You didn't see the lesson, right? And if you turn those eyes over to look at what was I meant to learn from this? This didn't happen to me. It happened for me. What
Right.
am I meant to learn from this? How is it meant to make me stronger? What ability did I learn about myself in going through that? Am I not grateful for the fact I have the strength and the courage to do it? That's what you feed.
I've noticed in our family, we're all silver lining people.
Hmm.
So when someone says, "Oh, this one thing happened to me today that maybe it wasn't the greatest," the other person in the family immediately responds with the silver lining.
Yes.
And I love that. And I
Mhm.
think that's a takeaway too, maybe for your listeners. Always look for that silver lining.
It's always there. Things
Yes.
could be a lot worse. And I know people don't like to hear that. I say it to my daughter now and again. Things could be a lot worse. No, 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 no. And I get, look, I'm not taking away from the time of how you feel right now. But, feel it, go through the emotion. Those emotions are there for a reason. They're for you to spend, but don't become emotional over emotions,
I
because
love
that
that.
that leads into hysteria and trauma. And it's like I've always been the person to see what good can come out of it, because that's what helps me deal with what I'm facing, because I know that there's something good to come out of it, even if I don't see it immediately.
Yes. I'm the same. Back to that silver lining.
Yeah, exactly. We are the princess, as you said. We are the hero in our own stories. We are the warrior, warrior and warrior for everyone else. And I think it's a woman isn't afraid to ask other people for help, right? And I think this is what men can learn from women. Ask for help. Say, I'm out of my depth here. I don't know what to do. That actually shows strength and courage.
Yes, it
Right? It
does.
really does. And for women, we went through a phase, and I know it's still there because you just watch these housewife shows where it's bitching on each other. If you've got people that are bitching on you while you're in your self discovery, push them aside. You don't need that negativity. You will say goodbye to some friends. You may even say goodbye to some family. Will they come back into your life later on if they rise up in their frequency? Maybe, but you've got to concentrate on you becoming the hero in your own story. What is it that you want? Because when you become what you want and you love who you are, doing what you want to do, then you become the heroine in other people's stories.
That's exactly true. And I really like to use the glass slipper analogy.
Mm,
You can break the glass ceiling, right? But that glass slipper, it was not meant to be one size fit all.
no.
You need to just forget about that and figure out what kind of shoe best fits you and go for that. And take responsibility for that. That's up
Yeah.
to each of us to do.
Yeah. And just because the shoe doesn't fit in that moment doesn't make you an ugly sister. That
Yeah,
means it's just the wrong shoe. Go
that's
look
right.
for your own shoe.
That's right. That's
So
right.
I love that you've taken all Disney fairy tales and things again that we grew up with, and we're looking for our Prince Charming, and how many people rushed into marriage, thinking this is going to be my happy ever after, and then finding out it isn't. Instead, where we look at women and going, no, I want to explore life, I want to explore my options, I want to discover who I am. Um, and if I find somebody along the way, that's great, but I don't need someone. I would like someone, but I don't need them.
Yes. As my daughter put it to me, we were watching the movie Brave, and
Yes.
I thought this was actually the actresses performed the scene from the book the other day at Barnes and Nobles. I was watching the movie and I was sure she walked in, she smelled the popcorn, she saw me watching the end of the movie, and I feel it's my duty to catch her up on the movie. And I said, Disney hasn't brought the prince yet, but I think it's maybe going to be this bear. This was Brave, Merida, the one that's set in
Yes, yes.
Scotland. And I said, I think it's going to be that bear because Disney always brings a prince. This is me saying this out
Yes.
loud to her. And she says, Mom, the prince is not coming. She's got this.
Yes.
And then she's like, You of all people should know that
Yeah.
because that's what you did.
Yes.
And it truly was an epiphany for me that
Mm.
because I had all these at the time,
Old
like
programming.
60 years of
Yes,
programming. Yes, I
yes.
think I even used that word in the
Mm.
book. Like I had that programming that taught me otherwise. And then I found myself saying to her, because I still couldn't believe it. When she first told me, I said, Disney will bring the prince in the credits. Now, how stupid is that? And when you hear yourself say something out loud that's really stupid, I started laughing hysterically, like tears are flowing, and at how stupid I sounded. And she just reinforced, like, Mom, you have done this. You are the hero. And to hear your child say that to
Yes.
you, these aren't words they often say to you, So when they say that, it's like, oh my gosh, I really am the hero of my story. And I did write my own happy ending. And I am one of the happiest people I know, and she
Right.
knows, and whatever. And wow. So I
Mm.
really thank her for helping me see
Yeah.
myself. Like that's another thing I think people do, maybe they don't, especially women, you don't see yourself. They told
Yeah.
you you're supposed to take the word sorry out of your vocabulary. So many
Yes.
women like
We're
belittle themselves.
Canadian. That's what I always said.
That's going to be tough for you guys, but you're not supposed to say sorry. Men don't typically say
No,
sorry. They'll
no.
just, if something happened, it was their fault. They won't say, oh, sorry. They'll just say, well, we can blah 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 or whatever. They get into action mode, and women are like, oh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. No, you don't have to apologize. Let's just take that word out. So there's a
Yeah.
takeaway too.
Yeah, you can change the dialogue. Okay, I'm accountable for what I've just said or done. I own that. My apologies.
Right.
Um, and I
Here's
was,
what we're going to do, or
and
here
here's
are
what we're
some
going to do.
options.
Exactly.
Here are
Yeah.
some solutions. How do
I
we
think
fix this?
it's a lot of because we were brought up with certain verbiage. Say it this way, say it that, because again, it's indoctrinated
The
into our
programming,
DNA, the
right?
programming. And it's like when we're aware of it, change the verbiage.
Yes.
What do you
Yes.
say to yourself? What are you saying to others? And it's like sometimes we're unaware until somebody says, are you aware you just? And then you go, oh my God, I didn't mean it that way. It's
Right.
just the old programming made the mouth say that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, don't beat yourself up, please, because this is all a learning curve. There's so much. The older we are, the more we have to let go of. And old programming, the more we have to insert new. Don't beat yourself up for making choices you used to make or saying things you used to say. But when you're aware, you care. When you care, you do something about it.
Yes, that starts with that awareness for
Yes.
sure.
And, often we're not. My kids catch me out on things all the time. And and because yes, I will, I'm positive towards everyone else and not necessarily always towards me. And so they
Hmm.
catch me out on that and call me out on it. And it's like we do need that reminder because we still sometimes have that old dialogue in there. And turn around and look at that dialogue and fire it. I'm sorry, you're just not needed anymore. It's not who I am. It's not who I
Right.
want to be.
Well, you're an extremely positive person, Sarah. I can see that. And and I love your advice about the programming in the columns. I think
Mm.
that's super advice.
Again, it's that awareness because we know subliminal dialogue going on when you actually see the words in front of you and you go, gosh, I feel, and don't think it. Please don't think it when you write it. Just feel it and write it. This is, oh, what words do they want? No, just pour out on paper. Let it write itself.
Yes.
I have a program that does that, if you become aware of, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was being this negative, and I was not feeding the positivity, and why is that? What is in
Well,
my way?
writing the memoir gave me the
Yes,
clarity to see that I was the one who had transformed. Again, I needed my daughter and the publisher to
yeah,
also point it out, but when you actually put the words on the page, it suddenly makes sense to you. It is holding up that mirror. It's like, to use another Disney princess analogy, when Mulan looked at her reflection and she
yes,
could see that she actually had become a true warrior princess, and wasn't this girl from the small town village in China.
yeah,
So
exactly. And we all have that epiphany moment where we suddenly realize this is the skin I'm in, all right, and it's kind of that step back and a real reflection of looking at who we are. And you know what? Pat yourself on the back, embrace
yes,
yourself. Look at what you've gone through to become who you are today. Look what beacon of illumination you are for others because you've gone through it. You made the choice to live positively. And that choice has now benefited other people. Always remember, you being the best light for you sheds light on other people's journeys for them to walk their own path into their own light.
I love that.
And that's what you've done in the book. I wrote mine a couple of years ago. It's very daunting, isn't it? Writing things down. And so I wrote it kind of from where am I now? I went through this, but it made me become that. And it's still kind of, I don't want to revisit it. It's done. So
It's
it,
definitely one of the most difficult things I've ever done.
yeah,
I mean, I've written hundreds of corporate speeches
yeah,
for CEOs and everything, but to write down your own
uh-huh,
life, to me, it was like a 1,000-piece puzzle.
yeah,
And you do a piece here, you don't write it chronologically, you write it in
yeah,
memories that pop up, and then you try to make meaning out of
yeah,
those memories.
mm,
And, for me, I ended up putting the lessons of the childhood, they came through it as flashbacks.
hmm,
So I have kind of one little flashback per chapter that helped. And I do something called an E structure, which is, if anyone has seen Cheryl Strayed's Wild, the one that Reese Witherspoon starred
hmm,
in, it became a movie from her book. She starts on the mountain and heaves over the boot, and then later it comes back to that. That's like a lowercase e. It's circling back around. So I
hmm,
have a little bit of that going on. But these were things I had never written a book, so I didn't know how to do this. So I had to kind of read I was a reader all my
hmm,
life and an accidental author. So I had to read a lot and see, like, how do I want to tell my story? I don't want to
hmm,
just go from A to B. I want to make it
yeah.
interesting. And I'm told that it reads more like a novel, that it's, very highly engaging.
And that's the way you want it to be. But again, you allowed it to come out in its format how it wanted to do. And I think that's,
Yes.
whenever you're writing something, pour it out. It can be
Yes.
redefined and reordered and afterwards, but pour it out because it's
Yes.
it's that inner voice that wants to come out. And quintessentially, you took your flawsomeness, all those cracked things of your life that have made you who you are today, and with each chapter, that became the love that put your bowl back together. And that's celebrating in your book now, the
And
journey.
then and that's what makes sense to you, the writer, as
Mm,
you may not know, like I didn't
no.
know where the book was going when I started writing those little memories down. And it will find its shape. So just
Yes.
write, just
Yes.
write.
Yeah. And you're not writing this for other people's approval, right? You're writing for you. And the refinement of that book will come with the publishers and the editors. But it is, if it's not heartfelt, it doesn't matter how well it's written. If it comes from the heart, comes from the soul, comes from the very depth of you, that will be felt on every page.
That's great advice.
So thank you for writing your book. Obviously, something that people need very much right now. And, not just our generation, the younger generation, because they're kind of caught, especially millennials. I've got 3 millennials. They're kind of caught in the middle of deciding themselves. I have a 42-year-old who, didn't want to get married and have children. I have a 40-year-old son who's married somebody with a child, so not sure if they're going to have one or not. And then my youngest one, she's about to pop out number 3. All 3 boys. Poor Nana getting beaten up all the time, but I love it. And so these were their choices based on their life experience and what they wanted to do. For my 42-year-old daughter, if it had been 10 years earlier or 20 years earlier, why aren't you married? You're just a spinster. No,
Yes.
instead of, no, this is, I'm a better aunt than I would be a mum. All right. So, that's the important thing, is know who you are and what your forte is. I was born to
Yes.
be a mother. That was my role. Right. But not everybody is. And it's okay for you to say, no, not my path. But what is your path? Take that journey and discover. And it's never too late to discover it. And you're never too old to reveal it, because you've shared your reveal of your journey of life that now becomes somebody's beacon of light on their journey. So where can people get the book, and where can they find you, love?
It's distributed by Simon and Schuster, so it's available everywhere books are sold. So from Amazon to Apple iTunes, there's even an audio version, and every independent bookstore in between, you name it. And I would be honored for any reader to take the time to read the book and send me an update. You can find
Mm,
me on my website. Let me know how you're rewriting your script. It's forgetthefairytale.net is where the website is. I'm also active on Instagram, and my Gen Z daughter, I have 2 millennials and then a Gen Z, and my Gen Z daughter got me on TikTok. So
yeah.
you're seeing my home here in the background. It's called the Cascade Treehouse, and the publicist had an idea to, do a home tour like they do 73
Yeah.
Questions with Vogue. So there's a home tour up there that my daughter did with me out there. So yes, I'm fully exposed here, and I've had a lot of fun doing it. Those are the
Yeah.
things I'll always treasure out of this book journey, are, connecting with my kids on the book marketing piece of it. That's been so
Yeah.
much
And it's
fun.
lovely when they're a part of it as well,
Yeah.
right? Because it just makes it so much more special. Forget the fairytale.net. Okay. And Facebook, forget the fairy tale, find your happiness. Instagram, forget the fairy tale. TikTok is the same, is it, love?
Yes.
Okay. And, you know, you have a story inside of you, folks, right? And it's like when we read somebody else's story, it inspires the story within ourselves wanting to come out. And so if you feel that feeling, if you feel it's opening doors for you, if you feel that, well, she did this and I could do that, that's what it's about. It's something you put down, and it's I have another genre called an author's kiss, and it's like a kiss that keeps on embracing you. A good book is because something in that chapter stood out, and it keeps speaking to you. And that's when you know you've got a good book, and it keeps on giving. And so pass it on. Don't forget birthdays, Christmases, or just for the sake of it, or giving a gift. A book is always a wonderful gift to give, and giving a book of self-discovery. Somebody else's self-discovery is going to open the door for somebody else's self-discovery. So gift the book. Um, and, I think it's also a really good book to kind of give to teenagers that are in their very confused state, especially in the world today, of embracing that empowerment. Although they're not buying into the Disney princess as much, um, it's kind of, I don't know, that the Disney princess has kind of come out in a different way, but there's still that, being the princess and looking for their prince in all the wrong places. So I think that empowerment of self that you take to drive forward with you in your life is what we all need to have, no matter the age. And the younger they are, the better they are to get to it. So mums, read this book so you can be a better influence for your daughters and your sons. Don't
It's a
forget your sons.
it's a great beach read, I think, too. It's
Great. A beach, a cruise, a park, picnic, curled up in the corner somewhere on a rainy day. It's just something. Take your time, devour it. And you know what? Make some notes along the way. Oh gosh, this really opened up this Pandora box. So this really meant something to me. Write it down. Write down what impact it had on you. And then at the end of the book, revisit everything that it sparked in you, because that's now just become your self-discovery. So thank you so much, Deb, for being with us here today.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. I enjoyed it.
My pleasure. And remember, everybody, we could still be the princess. We could still find our Prince Charming, but we don't compromise. We don't compromise who we are, why we are, and what we're here to do. And if you find somebody that respects and loves you for it, all the better, because that's the way it's meant to be. Until next time, bye for now. We hope that you enjoyed the show. There are so many more for you here on selfdiscoverywisdom.com. Just go to the podcast tag at the top there and you will see all the many genres and all 3,000 shows ready for your listening. We are here to serve you, to help you on your journey of life, and we know that through inspiration it begets invitation. We are supported by you, the listeners, and those that we interview. Anything that you can spare us in donation would be greatly accepted, and we do hope that you enjoy the next show.